Ladies and gentlemen, my name is George Pride, and welcome to my perspective. By what you see in front of you, I guess you can probably guess the next topic: gun control. So I have a question. What is the difference between these two firearms? A lot of people on the internet might already know. The difference is gauge. You know, one's a bit bigger. Also goes through concrete a bit better. Let's try something else. What is the difference between a machine gun, or not a machine gun even? What is the difference between a pistol? What is the difference between these weapons? Well, one's a sidearm, a pistol, one's a rifle. This one here is actually a lot alike of my 22 rifle. My 22 rifle actually shoots a pistol round. That's what a carbine is. It shoots a pistol. These are not deadly here. These are not the problem. These are not what does the killing. This is merely just think of it as a launch silo. That's all it is. It's a launch silo. If you want to be correct, this is what's deadly. These are bullets. These are what goes in the gun. Now let's talk about gun control. There's lots of things, lots of people talking about, should we limit high capacity mag? Should we limit, assault rifles? Should we limit, all these things? And honestly, I'm against it. Now, I guess registration is fine. We have these high class, military weapons that, we have to register for. I'm fine for that. I'm fine with having my name on something saying that I have a, rifle in my home. But here's the problem. It's a little pesky thing called the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Infringed. I'm going to give a definition of the word infringed because I'm sure the American people know what it is, but I just want to be, just in case any politician reads this. Let's see what infringed meant. Okay, first off, this is by, let's see, let's figure out what it is. Um, Origin is Latin. That's good to know. Uh, I don't know what dictionary this is, but we'll assume it's correct. Okay, everybody assume it's correct? Yes? No? Maybe? Infringed. Actively break the terms of. Infringe is to actively break the terms of an agreement, a law, etc. So that means that these what do you call them? City ordinances are infringing by the very definition. They are infringing of the Constitution of the United States of America. People say that this is to protect hunting. Well, let's see. What does militia mean? A military force that is raised in a civil population to supplement a regular army in an emergency. But that's not the full definition because it doesn't talk about the militia being used against the British. It doesn't talk about the militia being against the government. These are to protect us from hostile government entities. Necessary to the security of a free state. Well, let's see. Americans don't need guns anymore, right? We don't need militias. It's not necessary to the security of a free state. Well, okay. We already have agreements with Microsoft. We have, this isn't even tinfoil hat stuff. Everybody should know this by now. You're being surveilled. Anytime you click the I agree button to one of those um, downloads or anything, you're giving away a portion of your freedom. Usually it's not in your best interest to click I agree. We always assume that it's just something like, oh, I agree that I can't, copy this, download it, and send it again. No, it's usually something to have to do with information being collected and sent to third-party sources. All these free downloads that we get aren't exactly free. They're looking for something. And this information is being sold online en masse to corporations, including the government entities. Not the entire government's out to get you, but it's in their best interest out of national security to know who you are, what you believe, and are you a threat. It's logical. It's logical. It's logical and efficient. It's non-intrusive. You just click a little I agree button, and they know what you're doing. I'm not going to get into them looking through video cams or having the ability to remotely turn on your phone or anything. Or, let's not even talk about the stuff Snowden uh, got out about. A militia is necessary to the free state. It is our job as American people to keep our government in check. But we've given away that freedom. You know, as a criticism of this, people say, well, what do you think people should have? Access to drones? Well, maybe not people, but maybe a private military organization. Maybe a militia should maybe have a few drones. Maybe. Why not? And this right shall not be infringed. Well, it's being infringed in Colorado. Let's look at the crime statistics in Colorado. Are they even showing the statistics now, or are they wary of people actually knowing? No idea what this is. I want Colorado in general. Annual crime, so that's yearly crimes. 16,554. Uh, so that's, rapes, murder, all that. Property, 1,000, 135,510 property crimes. So that's, stuff like breaking your neighbor's leprechaun statue to stealing something. Now let's talk about the Orlando shooting. If you haven't heard about it, get out from underneath your rock. You know, people who live under a rock are on YouTube most of the time. You should have heard about it there. I'm gonna assume you know about it. If one person had a gun strapped to his waist, we would have had bullets flying the other direction. And I know someone's going to say, well, isn't that more dangerous? Yes, it is, if you don't know what you're doing. Most gun owners I know have guns because they love to shoot. They like to hit targets. They like to be out on the range shooting for accuracy. Most people I know, and of course I'm from Montana. I'm in Montana right now, so I'm a little bit biased. Most people I know how to work a gun. They know how to clean it, they know how to repair it. Canadian and Alaskan sharpshooters were used in World War II. Why? Because they knew how to shoot. They were hunters. They relied on their weapons for food, for their very survival. They turned the war on a few. They turned the tide of battle for a few of them. These people were trained to handle harsh environments. Let's see. There was one battle. It was one of the island battles. The ones where we were attacking Japan, and it got to be really cold, really wet. The the Alaskan and Canadian ones were thriving in these environments because they knew what to do. They knew how to survive in these harsh environments. I'm not a prepper. I'm not saying there's going to be a zombie apocalypse or anything. But I value basic training. I've been in martial arts for 10 years. I'm wanting to get into basic first aid training, paramedic training. The ability to remove, stuff, set bone, that kind of thing. I'd find it very helpful. And that's something that Americans have lost. We don't understand basic skill sets. There's a very good video by a guy called Boy in the Band on YouTube that talks about the education system and how there's a lot of pointless stuff in there. There is. A lot of the stuff that's in there shouldn't stay in school, and that's the message. Get these things that have no meaning out of school. Basically, the message is there's lots of stuff the school talks about. There's this high-end math, high-end, you know, his this a lot of pointless history that only matters to people who are going into that field. You know, we don't need an entire month on the subject of history. If you're gonna teach history, get the Roman Empire in there. That's what we need. Learn about the Romans. Figure out how their uh civilization died. It's kind of what we're going through here. Just show it and move on, and get a lot more core tenets in there. First aid. And I have a question for you. How many of you know your basic human rights? Down in the comments right now, I want you to post how many basic human rights you have. How many of them? Pause this video. You have 10 seconds. There are 30 basic human rights. A lot of people don't even know they have basic human rights. I went off on a tangent. So, guns. That's where we started. So let's look at a big and scary gun. Big and scary. This is an LMG. It is pretty much illegal to own unless you have certain certification in it. It shoots pretty fast. But this is not the problem. This is not the problem. A friend of my family's, excuse me, his son was hit by a drunk driver. Now, how many of you think that when his son was hit by the drunk driver that he went after the car dealership? They went after the alcohol industry. I'd be all for him going for the alcohol industry. So, if someone who's driving drunk, it's their fault, why is it the gun's fault? America might America is not like Britain. America is not like these other countries with gun control as part of their creed, as part of their I want to say constitution. Not every country has a constitution. America is built on these freedoms. If you take a $1 bill, you'll see a pyramid on the back building up to the Eye of God or the Eye of the Illuminati, whatever, the Eye of Horus, or whatever you want to believe. I take this as the foundation of America has been laid. It's our job to continue building on that, giving people more and more freedoms, spreading these, dare I say it, Western Christian ideals. This ideal that has persisted in empires being built for years. The Roman Empire lasted how long? It was built on a lot of the same liberties for Romans. Not to mention the Greeks. People go and say that this this country is bad and this country has problems. It does. Our country's not perfect. But what do we have to compare it to? I'm going to continue on this video. I was going to make another one, but I've noticed a few of my videos are a little short. So let's talk about America's history. America has blood on its hands. There was a war between the United States of America and the Commonwealth of Russia, or the USSR. This was known as the Cold War. It was a direct result from World War II. Basically, America wasn't committing troops to battles, and Russia was taking the brunt of the casualties. And another problem was we decided to do things differently. We were more committed to Britain than Russia and a few other things. And I'm sure historians are going to be yelling at me in comments for completely butchering history, but that's pretty much it. That's two of the major problems. And this resulted in the Cold War. Now, let me put this in perspective for you. I'm in Montana in a town of a population of about 1,000. My uh, my house has a bunker in the front yard that is actually a something that the owner would keep um, poached deer in, but it also doubles as a nuclear shelter. Just something for the original blast. Population of 1,000. And I have my own nuclear bunker in my front yard. Now, this is a threat that every American and Russian people were under the threat of constantly. They did uh, a bunch of what I don't even know what you call them anymore. Uh, Raids, not raids. Basically, it's where they have alarm and everybody's supposed to go through the. It's like training, but on a large scale for civilians. They all go through the motions. It's like it's like drills. That where they are. They'd have sirens on, all that. They'd have their air raids. America and Russia had enough nuclear weapons during this time to completely destroy the Earth, and that was the time when we were really close to it. Now, after this, as the threat of nuclear war, Armageddon, wore off, America and Russia were still very hostile towards each other, but we didn't want to engage each other in a land battle. So basically, we took countries like so we were working with South Vietnam for something. I'm not really sure, and Russia started selling weapons to the Vietnamese. So and also China started butting in, and communism started beating us back, and that's one of the first wars we lost. And that was against Vietnam. That was the War of Vietnam. Of course, we learned about the weapons sale, and we got pissed off, and we did the same to them with Iraq and Afghanistan. We started arming up the tribes and started uh, training them as well. They were all secondhand. We didn't think much of it. We're just gonna get back at the damn Ruskies. Get all pissed off at them, damn Ruskies. Of course, the American people largely didn't know about this. They still don't. And then we in America started having a large oil crisis. Well, we didn't, you know, we didn't start having it. We've been having it for a long time. And so we saw, hey, we've been helping these people out a lot. Maybe they'd give us the oil. We went through the negotiations. We got more and more angry, and eventually we decided to go attack them. Now, I don't say we, the American government did. And then we decided to occupy them. This is a empiristic thing, occupation. This is something that's Rome done. Let's see, the Byzantine Empire, uh, Assyria, and all these big warmongering historical giants. That's what all these have done, and now we've done it. And we did it through the government lying to the American people, saying that Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan had a nuclear arsenal. We need to go get them. So we sent troops in. As soon as the American people started realizing, hey, there's no nuclear arsenal here, it was voted for the troops to get pulled out. But the problem still assists, and of course the Arab people were still angry, so uh, these trained, well-armed militias started reorganizing into Hamas, um, uh, Hajan, and ISIS. Hamas, Hazad, and Hazad. I think it's Hazad. I can't remember now. And ISIL. So America does have blood on its hands, and we can take this even further. What other blood do we have on our hands? America in general. See the Native American tribes. That wasn't really America. That was more the. It was still the colonists. It was the post America. There was America was originally occupied by nations. It was kind of like Europe, where there was unions and wars. It was more like feudal kingdoms. There was kingdoms and there was treaties and all that, and that's what was going on in Native America. There were actual city states. Like with the Aztecs and all this. And this technology from Europe pretty much got an army of, I think it was like 30 or 40 men, the ability to take out the Aztec Empire. Of course they did it through manipulating politics and all that, but they continued doing it. And America started um, sending over colonists, and they started taking more and more land. Native Americans got more and more angry. That's what happened, and everybody got madder and madder, and battles happened. Native Americans started attacking settlers. There were treaties between France and one of the local Native American tribes on the eastern coast. Basically, they were using these Native American tribes as mercenaries. And yeah, that's my history. Basically, entire nations were strewn down and pulled down and put into little reservations. Now, all of it wasn't America's fault. A lot of people, uh, or I'm not even sure if it's my tribe or not, but generally it goes that America is at fault for giving smallpox. This was before germ warfare was even thought up. It's not like these smallpox were used in, you know, you know, whatever you call it, chemical warfare or anything. They just want to get blankets. Hey, here's something we have that you look like you could use. Have a blanket. They didn't realize that there were, the bubonic plague and smallpox that they've gone through. They didn't even know about immunities and all that. It's not like this was all malicious intent, but eventually it got to the point where Native Americans understood that these were bad, but they figured it was something from the spirits, so they started using these blankets in battle, and leave them behind for the enemy. Let's see. What else do we have? So I could use the obvious World War II, World War One, but a lot of those weren't America's fault. It's not something I can directly credit to the American government. I can't blame it on America. Well, I guess I could technically blame America for the independence. They were pissed off because they didn't want to pay tax for tea, so they started killing people. We see that with pride, but we were killing people over money over tea. We're putting money over the lives, which there was more to it, but that was the propagandized problem. I could blame it on them, but I don't blame them for that. See, and there was the French-American War. All these. America is an empire. It has its bloody history, and a lot of time this happens through the American people being lied to. But again, the Americans, voted for these lies under the National Security Act. So, my voice is getting cracked. I can barely feel my tongue right now. So, my name's Dragon's Pride. This is my perspective, signing out.